So in terms of like what happens with the budget, I mean, this is going to go out very close to it.
Yeah.
What key things should people look out for? Like, are there alarming things that you're looking at? Are there things that you want people to understand, or any changes that you think will come up?
So I think that the cash ISA change will happen. Something that I think is really worrying, but I do think it's going to happen, even though it doesn't sound bad, I think it could be quite bad. It's the continuous freezing of the thresholds, the income band thresholds.
Okay.
So as we said, the personal allowance is £12,570. The higher rate threshold is £50,270. That is frozen until 2028. There are talks of it being frozen beyond 2028, maybe 2030, continuing on. And even though that is not an actual income tax rise, it essentially is. They call it a stealth tax, because as salaries go up, if the threshold stays as it is and salaries go up, more people are going to be having to pay tax. And I think that's really unfair, and I think that's really worrying for a lot of people. And I think that they're going to play it in a way that they're not increasing taxes when actually that could be really detrimental. Another thing that I think they might change, actually it's two things. I think they might make changes to pensions and inheritance tax. Bear in mind, this is based on nothing. I'm completely guessing this, but I feel like
locked away until the 26th of November.
Exactly.
Right?
And I have absolutely no idea what they're going to do. But they're already talking, well, they've already said that pensions will come into your inheritance tax estate come April 2027, which they've never done before. I think they could make changes on the amount of money that you can draw down in a tax-free lump sum, which is currently around 258,000.
That's the lifetime allowance, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So 25% tax-free, but a cap of 250,000.
Yeah. I think they might reduce that.
Okay.
I just feel like that could be an easy way for them to bring in more money. I also feel like with the inheritance tax, so at the moment, just kind of a brief overhaul of what's kind of going on with inheritance tax. So when you die, you have to pay 40% of your estate to inheritance tax, but there's a taper relief. So if you give a gift, and then if you give a gift to your child and you survive 7 years after giving that gift, it's inheritance tax free. But if you give a gift and unfortunately you die 3 years later, you don't pay the full 40%. It's called a tapered relief. So you'll pay a smaller amount of inheritance tax, but you'll still have to pay inheritance tax. I have a feeling they're going to increase that 7 years to something like 10 years. So actually you have to give a gift and survive 10 years. Otherwise it will be pulled back into your estate.
And that's probably to stop people trying to give gifts in order to avoid it, right? Cash ISAs might be changing. We've talked about that. They may go, it's on the table that they may go from £20,000 a year to £10,000 a year, or maybe even £4,000. But they're different to stocks and shares ISAs, right? That tax allowance isn't changing. So people will be able to still invest £20,000 tax free.
Yeah.
Flexibly if it's in an invest engine ISA, for example. But the amount you can pay into a cash ISA is lowering, right?
Yeah, so it's basically taking away your choice of where you'll put your ISA money. So you'll still have, as you said, the £20,000 annual limit. But what there's speculation on is that you will only be able to put 10,000 into a cash ISA. And the other £10,000 you can put into either stocks and shares ISA or a lifetime ISA. So those are the different ones. But the fact of the matter is, if you wanted to put £20,000 into a stocks and shares ISA today, you will still be able to do that if there's a change. It's just the cash ISA amount might be reduced to £10,000.
But so right now, I couldn't put £20,000 into a stocks and shares ISA and 20,000 into a cash ISA.
The ISA, you only have £20,000 in total across all ISAs. That's very important.
So when they reduce the available amount on a cash ISA, they will cap that at 10.
Yeah.
And then you'll still have 20,000, or you'll have the remaining.
You'll have the remaining 10,000 to put elsewhere.
Fine. And so if it's 4, it'll be the remaining 16.
Yes.
Sure.
I mean, I actually don't know what they're going to do. They were talking about reducing it to 4, and I think there was just like complete uproar about it. And now they're kind of throwing around the £10,000 figure. So I do think it's something that could change. But do you think that it's a good thing?
I think it's encouraging that the UK is sort of taking a growth mindset of like getting people to invest. Like, I mean, if you can get people to build wealth, we know historically that investing has done better than cash saving. Yes, you've got to handle a little bit more volatility. Yes, there are uncertainties, but if we can get the country to take an investor mindset, I think like we're encouraged to maybe take a little bit more risk or maybe be a bit more entrepreneurial. I think it can only build prosperity within the country. I think it's a good thing. I think it would be sensible maybe to split the allowances, like having, I think it just adds further complexity. Like, okay, you have £4,000 in cash, but it's the same allowance, but they're not separate, but they are treated as
It's
separate.
just another way of making something that could be so simple confusing.
Because it's the same with Lifetime ISA, right? Like Lifetime ISA is a separate allowance, but it's an ISA.
Yeah.
And then you've got what they could be referring to as the sort of British Innovation ISA. Is that right? Again, it's an ISA, but it's something else. And then you have SEIS, EIS for these schemes.
Yeah.
Again, it's another tax efficient vehicle, but it's a different allowance.
Yeah.
It's all just a bit confusing. You'd think that they could just simplify it by splitting them out. But
I also feel like a lot of people who I've spoken to feel like they're being pressured into being incredibly risk taking, so like the opposite of risk averse, when actually I feel like a lot of people, I mean, they should definitely use Invest Engine because you have so many ETFs and they are more risk averse, so you don't have to just put your money like I do into like a certain stock. You can be, you can put it into something that is quite risk averse, and hopefully, I mean, because it's spread across so many companies, you're not as kind of, I don't know what the word is, you're not at risk of losing everything because, if something doesn't do as well, something else will kind of bring it back up. So I
think that's a theory, right? Like all investing carries risk, and yes, like there is a risk that like everything could blow up in our faces, and yeah, that is a risk that everyone has to kind of keep in the back of their minds. But if you're split in a sensible portfolio that is like across different geographies, different sectors and industries, and different currencies, one should hope that it plays out in the long run, as opposed to putting it in cash and settling for what has historically been, I mean, up until a couple of years ago, it's been not like 0.1%.
I know.
I mean, it doesn't do well for people's savings. That you need millions to even make a reasonable amount. Whereas now, obviously, it's a bit different. But that is hopefully coming down, which will obviously do wonders for people's mortgages and other things. But sad things for people's savings, which hopefully the government will split out, and it'll make it a bit more simple. If tax planning is so important, like that's your number one priority, it's the one thing that you want most people to hit.
Yes.
We can do that with ISAs. Obviously, Invest Engine has a flexible ISA, so you can, whatever you withdraw, if you need to draw on that money, you can top it back up and it not affect your tax allowance.
Yeah.
Which is really cool because it means if you put £1,000 in but you need 500 back out, you don't have 19 grand tax allowance. You have the 19,500 because it's flexible. But how can people, I understand how people can plan with ISAs, but how can they plan when the budget's coming up and there's a lot of talk around reducing the limit on cash ISAs? No one really knows, obviously nothing's set in stone what's going to happen, but how do you plan when an event like this is so close?
Well, the first thing I always say is don't panic and don't just rush into doing something, because normally when the budget comes out, things don't come into play until a few months later. It's normally the new tax changes come into play the following April. So the first thing, if you're not sure what to do, just don't do anything for now and just wait and see what happens. Because there is a lot of uncertainty. The only thing I actually would say, which I don't normally say, this is completely going against what I've just said, is the fact that they're talking about potentially reducing the cash ISA amount from £20,000 to £10,000. If you are set on putting your money into a cash ISA, I would put it in now. You won't lose anything by putting it in now. If you want to max out £20,000, that's what I would do, because that I really think is one of the things that could be changing. But other than that, I would just sit and I would wait and don't panic, because, I'll be giving a lot of information out after. I'm sure you will be as well, to try and help people and guide them through the changes that will be happening.
Yeah. And of course, it's not financial advice, but I think just to put it in layman's, what you're telling the people who tune in is make the most of it now.
Yeah.
And then just wait. The important thing is plan now, don't panic, use it if you need to. And then again, with a flexible ISA, you can just withdraw it if you need to as well.
Yeah.
So again, don't panic and make use of it where we can.
Absolutely.